Welcome to the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast with KOMO Sports Director Niko Tamurian and Najee Moye.
Welcome to the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast. I'm KOMO Sports Director Niko Tamurian, joined by my guy, Najee Moye, awesome producer extraordinaire. And Najee, may I say you have an awesome new haircut?
I do have an awesome new haircut. It's been a long time coming. If you can see, it's not new, but shout out to my barber, always making me look clean, because this time of year for everyone, sports and otherwise, we're getting to the crunch time, getting close to the end of the year. Things are winding down. Things are getting colder outside. If you're in Seattle, you definitely know what we're talking about. Thanksgiving is just around the corner. Christmas shopping. We're getting to crunch time for all these things. Specifically, also, for the Seahawks and Huskies. This is a massive weekend. This is a weekend that if things go wrong for either one of these two teams, we could be looking at a very, very sad 2024.
Najee, I'm going to go way off script here.
Oh.
We have a plan sometimes on this show.
Only sometimes.
And I'm just going to, I just came to my head. I'm going to go off it.
Okay.
Will folks in Seattle, when they go Christmas shopping, be buying Washington Huskies football Pac-12 championship shirts? Yes or no? College football playoff shirts? Go.
Yes. They're buying all of those things.
I like it.
They're buying all those things, and I would love for them to be able to buy a national championship hat at the end of the year too. There's no reason why they shouldn't. I know we're going to get into the Huskies more often later on in this podcast.
I know I totally ruined the script there, but
no, there's no ruining of scripts. There's no script. That's the one.
It's like the NFL. There's no script.
There's no script. That's what we love doing podcasts, because basically you can say essentially not what you want, but what you want, but just in a very fluid manner. But yeah, if you look at, and this is a massive week. I mean, this is the first of two what I'm calling spite games for the Huskies. What do you think about that, Niko? I mean, given the state of the Pac-12 right now and the state of what it will be next year, we're playing a Pac-12 lifer, it seems like, in Oregon State. What do you think?
This is a game to me that is just so exciting and awesome. And free plug here, we are going to Corvallis and we'll have live coverage about that. Yeah, you're coming too.
No, I'm not. I'm staying home.
But to me, it's just a monumental matchup. And I know that can be cliche. It can be kind of like, okay, what do you mean by that? There's just so much in this game. And it starts, obviously, you've got number 5 Washington with visions of a Pac-12 and college football playoff season. You've got number 10 Oregon State. They look pretty darn good as well. And they can make a case for a conference championship, maybe more, if they beat the Huskies in Oregon in back-to-back weeks. Find a better resume. I mean, they lost to the Cougs in Pullman back when the Cougs were good still. No offense to something's going on with that team. They lost 6 in a row, obviously. But back to UW here. You have this backdrop of Oregon State has every opportunity to play spoiler. In this season where UW, call it survival, whatever it is, and I think it was that, they had to go to the Big Ten, given the information and TV contract that was presented to them. But how crazy, how fitting. This is why I love sports, because this stuff just always happens. Schedules are made years in advance in the Pac-12.
Right.
But in this league, in this season where UW is leaving for the Big Ten, their last 2 challenges in Pac-12 football to get all those goals they want are against the teams they're leaving behind, Oregon State and then Washington State. I mean, is that just not poetic in every way? And if they can do it, which everybody in Seattle, most everybody in Seattle is clamoring for, it's this amazing moment. But if they don't, then it's the other folks that are upset about them leaving the Pac-12. They get their moment. And on top of all that, oh, by the way, you have 2 really awesome teams, 2 of the best 10 teams in college football. I mean, you cannot ask for more. As a sports reporter, more stories to tell with what's on the line in this game.
No, I mean, and I love it. You hit the nail right on the head, because the next 2 weeks they're going to be. I mean, Oregon State and Washington State, they definitely got a big axe to grind, especially against the Huskies. Not specifically against the Huskies, what Washington State does actually, but if you ever watch the show Curb Your Enthusiasm, you know there's a scene where the main character, Larry David, opens up a spite store directly next to a coffee shop because he went there with a friend and they gave him cold coffee and the table was wobbly. He was very upset. So upset he opened up a store right next door. I mentioned spite several times in this podcast because this is a first spite game. And, you know, when you look at these 2 teams, you mentioned it, Niko, Oregon State's ranked 10th in the country. That's not nothing to sneeze at, first of all. They're very, very good. They have a very good record, and they are coming off of a pretty great win against Stanford. They blew the doors off Stanford. And they've got a fantastic quarterback. And if you know anything about Huskies football, the Huskies also have a fantastic quarterback, but the defense has left kind of something to be desired. I mean, that's been my main sticking point for weeks on this podcast is like, can their defense secure a top quarterback? Can they? I don't know. What do you think?
It's going to be interesting. And certainly there have been several tests. I mean, they went against Caleb Williams, but yes, USC put up 42 points. UW kind of just outran them in a really fantastically fun track meet.
Right.
Bo Nix, it was 36, 36-33 rather game. So
a lot of points.
It's a lot of points. I'm eager to see that. And I'm especially eager to see if this team goes to the postseason, how it holds up. And I made this same gripe or argument last week. I'm really sick of people in their bowl projections ever putting Oregon in the college football playoff. It may happen. Like anything can happen.
They literally lost to Washington.
Like, how do you do that? Like they lost to them.
Literally.
And that is like the worst of it all to me. It's like, well, they could have won. Well, they didn't. I don't care if they were in control. You know what? Their coach gave it away. And the coach is part of the team.
Yeah.
Like the coach went for 2 4th downs. He said the loss was on him after. Freaking-tastic. The loss is on him.
Well,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I know what you're saying.
That gets me. I went on a tangent there. That's like I don't care who you root for. Like, that's just the dumbest logic ever. Like, why would UW won the head-to-head matchup?
In a class,
what are you doing?
And it was in a game that was an instant classic, first of all. And honestly, I'd love to see those teams play again. And there's a good chance that we will in the Pac-12 championship game, the last ever.
I know. Well, that's the other backdrop to this Huskies Oregon State game is that the schools are like literally entangled in a legal battle.
Literally.
And they're about to battle it out on the field the next couple of weeks. If you're talking about UW and then Oregon State, then Wazoo. So it's like they're literally fighting on and off the field. And I think it's a really, it just adds to it. It's just one of those things that this was always, even if this conference stuff wasn't going on, but it inevitably is, and inevitably makes this such a better story.
Right.
But even if it wasn't going on, like you said a minute ago, Naj, like it's number 10 versus number 5. And number 5, in my opinion, should be number 4 in the college football playoff. Like the committee, by the way, led by ACC athletic director at North Carolina, Boo Corrigan.
I've got words.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
I've got words.
Yeah. So yeah. I think that it's one of those deals where Washington is better than Florida State right now. Florida State maybe if they meet and it'd be probably a close game, great. But Washington has the better resume right now with all of those ranked wins, and they deserve to be in that 4th spot, not Florida State. And that's not a knock on Florida State. I think they're a fantastically talented team, but they've beaten one ranked team, and it was LSU. Like they're good. No, let's not beat around that. But
yeah. That brings us to a segment just about this specifically.
Let's do it.
About the college football ranking system.
Yeah.
What do you, I mean? 5 out of, if we call this segment fair or foul, and basically, what do you think about this ranking system here? It seems as though teams on the West Coast have historically been kind of like poo-pooed a little bit here. I mean,
so are you saying it's time for fair or foul?
Yes, I'm definitely saying it's time for fair or foul. Yeah, because the question we're asking today is the East Coast bias real against UW? And I've got this is my first fair because this is completely fair. As you guys may know, I was born in New York City, lived in Florida for a long time. I was definitely entrenched in SEC country, living in Pensacola, Florida. Most of my friends were Alabama football fans. Make that make sense? I won't make it make sense. But the committee is just leaning heavily on, obviously, Georgia, best team in the country. There's no denying that. Ohio State, very, very good. But if you look at some of the schedule for some of these teams that they play, or the other teams like Michigan's only played one ranked team all year, and it was against Penn State. Florida State creeped past Miami last week, and they had barely played much of anyone except for Duke. And I'm not going to lie, like Florida State is a blue blood program.
Sure.
And they have been for a long time, and they are getting back to what really makes them really, really good. But if Huskies fan, do you know the stress, the anxiety of having to play teams like USC, The Oregon game alone should put them in the top 4 by itself, I mean, and then just the schedule overall has just been just a nightmare. The Utah game was not easy at all. That's another ranked team, and it's not just UW. All the teams on the pack on the West Coast are getting kind of like, what is a good phrase for just not enough credit. They're not getting enough credit.
Yeah.
There's no way. I mean, Florida State's number 1 win. Yeah, they beat, Syracuse. They beat Wake Forest. They beat Pitt.
Whoop-dee.
Yawn, and they did beat LSU. LSU was a good team. They were ranked 5 at the time.
But what are they ranked now?
Well, they're not ranked 5 right now. I can tell you that much. And then other than that, the Florida State's hanging their hat on a Duke win. And it's like, okay, yeah, Duke was ranked 18th at the time. But I mean, what are we doing?
And that's the thing, the Huskies have had some really nice wins.
Yeah.
Oregon, USC, Utah. And it's just,
come on.
Yeah, it's just a little crazy to me. And
you can make the argument that some of the teams ahead of UW will play each other, Michigan will play Ohio State.
Sure.
That'll cancel each other out, But like Florida State, I mean, this strength of schedule is not so good that if they went undefeated, they would be automatically in the top 4. There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way.
I think that's where the problem comes in. If there's some kind of scenario where it comes down to UW and Florida State, let's say they're both undefeated.
Right. I would be floored.
But Florida State is ahead of them
currently. But I'm saying if both teams end up undefeated at the end of this year, I would be floored if Florida State is still ahead. I mean, because then you got Pac-12.
But what would change? Game. I guess, and I agree with you wholeheartedly on this. But that's what concerns me is like what would necessarily change.
Well, Washington would beat a good Oregon State team. They have a classic game against Washington State, a game that is probably going to be the closest game that they have all year, and then maybe seeing Oregon again in the Pac-12 championship game.
I mean, you would hope.
But
that's what worries me about it and that's why I think this is fair as well. I think that here's what's crazy to me, and a lot of these games start at like 10 p.m. out east. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes you can't stay. I mean, voters at 8 in the polls or whatever they aren't staying up till 1 a.m. They aren't in the moment.
Right.
And it's just
go to a bar and watch a game. I remember that's one thing I used to do in Florida all the time. Pac-12 after dark. Me and my old roommate Emerson. Shout out to Emerson if you're listening. Used to, just be prepared to go out, and do whatever. And then you just see a Washington playing, Oregon State.
Yeah,
at like 9:00 Central Time.
Well, yeah, and that's why one thing I love about living on the West Coast is noon football and NFL start at 10 a.m. It's wonderful.
Yeah,
I think what concerns me about this is that bias and the notion that because it's a Southern school, they have to be better than UW or Oregon or whoever. No,
that's not true.
And I mean, let's not forget, like Michael Penix Jr. is from Florida. Like this isn't like. And even if it was like a team of Seattle All-Stars, line them up, like whatever. But, it's just lazy. That's what it is. It's in the committee will say, we do all the research. Like, I'm sorry. You can take one look at the wins and see that Washington right now has a better resume than Florida State.
Yeah.
It's silly. And I mean, you could argue that they have a better resume than some of the other teams in the top 4. Michigan. Yeah. I won't go as far as Georgia, but Michigan for sure. And it's just, that's where they were ranked, or that. The Big Ten is the Big Ten,
But then the question I have though, next year, what does that look like?
It looks like a couple things for me. The first being,
provided UW is good enough, as good as they are this year. Next year,
that's the first point is that Michael Penix Jr. and some of those receivers are graduating,
right?
And so this, it's a totally different look, even if they're in the Pac-12 next year. But then they're suddenly in the Big Ten. The schedule. I think they'll still perform well, but it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, they've got to go out to Penn State. They've got to go out to Rutgers. I mean, they've got a couple of these East Coast trips that are not easy.
No.
Michigan will come here. That'll be fun.
That'd be fun. I'd love to.
Yeah. I mean, some other schools are in that schedule. Like Northwestern comes here. They go to Iowa. So it's
it'll be a fun schedule.
It'll be a fun schedule.
Yeah,
but I think the biggest thing is that this is a different team, and it's going to really show, okay, Kalen DeBoer is a fantastic coach. Got his 100th victory last weekend against Utah. Has a career coaching record, Naj, of 100 wins and 11 losses.
That's a lot.
I think that's good.
A lot to a little.
21-2 at UW. Only the second time ever that a Huskies football team has started the season 10-0, and I think the last time ended up all right. And but it's fantastic coach. It's going to really shine a light on his recruiting, which I think has been very good.
Right.
That's what the future is especially in that transition time. He nailed the transfer portal as soon as he arrived, bringing Mike aboard, Penix. His high school recruits he's been bringing in are highly rated and look the part at practice. I love anytime I get to see Austin Mack, the freshman quarterback. I mean, he's 6'6".
Great name. Tall guy.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Big boy, and he can throw the ball, and he's mobile. So it'll be interesting to see how that translates. That'll be another fair or foul for maybe next August. I think, but I think they're gonna perform well. I really do.
Yeah, I think so too. Niko, you're gonna be in Corvallis very soon. In fact, what have you been in Corvallis before? What are you looking forward to doing?
You ready for this story?
Oh, I've got a story. Well, you got a story. Go ahead. I'm ready to listen. God, what is
I have driven by Reeser Stadium where the Beavers play one time.
Mm-hmm.
It was on my honeymoon.
Oh.
Because my wife and I, we were not living in the area at that time. We decided for our honeymoon, we would drive all the way down the West Coast from Seattle to San Diego. But we fell in love with Seattle so much, which is why I'm here right now, that we were winging it over the course of 3 weeks. We're like, let's stay another night in Seattle. Let's stay another night in Seattle. Eventually, when we left, we only made it to the Bay Area for 12 hours, which is cool. I mean, to San Francisco for 12 hours. One of my good friends who shout out to Latavius Murray had a big touchdown for the Bills last week.
Hey, shout out to Latavius. Y'all my fantasy team now.
He's a great dude, and he's one of my good buddies. I really love Latavius. But at the time he was on the Raiders, which they had training camp because they were Oakland at the time in Napa Valley. So he saw like all my social media stuff, like we're here, we're there. And he's like, hey, are you going to Napa? I'm like, we absolutely can. He's like, yeah, come to training camp. And he had us out to camp. And it was one of the coolest things ever. But the point I'm making about having been to Corvallis is on our way down Seattle, we're going down I-5. We switched over to Route 20 and Corvallis and took that route to the coast. And it is the most random thing ever. But yes, that is the time I went to Corvallis. I didn't stop even for gas, but I drove by the stadium. So I'm looking forward to spending some time in Corvallis, a little 4+ hour drive from downtown Seattle, and maybe we're coming home Sunday with a Huskies win.
I think that'd be great. You and Matt Landers are going out there. If you see Matt Landers, he's not Matt Landers from the Seahawks, by the way.
He's in the Panthers now.
Matt Landers from we have a Matt Landers who's a photog here. If you watch,
it's a great story.
A great story that Niko put together with Matt Landers, our photog here, with the other Matt Landers, former Seahawk, current Panther receiver. They don't look like twins at all, by the way. Not at all. Not at all. Niko, do you have a score prediction? Do you want to make for the Huskies? What are you thinking here? For Huskies, this 5 versus 10 in Corvallis.
28-27 Dogs.
Close game.
Yeah, very close game.
Are you thinking like an instant classic type deal like we saw?
Game-winning touchdown, Penix to McMillan.
Wow.
I can't wait to play this on the air if I'm right.
I'm sure if you're right, I'm sure a lot of Huskies fans will be like, another game where we're stressed out at the last moment.
Oh, that's the rest of the season. That is the last 2+ conference championship and then the college football playoff games, if that all works out. These are all stressful.
Again, crunch time. You're in crunch time, definitely. I mean, and you're going to be in Corvallis. That's the angle, though. That's the difference, be away top 10 matchup is just in a sort of in conference one too. I do think the Huskies will win. I do think it'll be close. I think it'll be about maybe, and I'm gonna guess another shootout. By the way, little shameless plug. I mentioned that I thought that the USC game would be a shootout, and it was.
Yeah, well done.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Well done. I said somebody was going to win by 4. I said, I didn't say it on this though. I did a little Instagram story before the Seahawks Browns. I'm like, Hawks by 4, and then they won by 4.
There you go.
So
we're not betting people on this app.
No, well, the sports book over Snoqualmie is convenient and fun. Yeah. I do like stopping there on occasion, but it's tough. Like I don't want to.
We don't want to sway anyone.
Yeah, no I just like driving to Snoqualmie. And my good friend Mike Ferrari, my brother, lives out there, so
Shout out to Mike also.
Love Mike Ferrari.
There's also some betting information scrolling on the bottom of the screen here, you guys. If you guys do feel inclined, I'm gonna go. I think this will be an instant classic, though. I don't think it'll be as close. I hope it's not as close. I'm gonna go maybe 37-27 Huskies.
Okay.
Because I don't want to even say the words Apple Cup because
is this the last one? I mean, we'll talk about that next week.
We'll talk about that next week. Yeah, it's gonna. But I think this is a really, really hard game before that really, really emotional game. And I think that the Huskies will definitely show why they deserve to be in the top 4 and not on the outside looking in, if not for just right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really upsets me. So I think Huskies win, and it sets up the most epic Apple Cup in years.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I know there was a good one in 18 and a couple others in that era, but this one, because of the conference background, is even more huge. And yeah, I can't wait for this game.
Yeah.
Live coverage, KOMO News Friday, and then Saturday, and then Sunday I get to drive back. And when I was driving back from Pullman when they beat Wisconsin, I had to have aforementioned Matt Landers drop me off right in front of Lumen Field and then run into the stadium like all in one foul swoop. At least the Hawks are on the road. Don't get me wrong, I wish I was at Lumen Field Sunday too, but I can kind of like, okay,
You'll be the only one there.
Yeah, I'd be the only one at Lumen Field. I'll carve out a little spot for myself, but I get to be there Thursday.
Oh yeah, that's true. Well, we'll get to Thursday in a second. Speaking of Lumen Field, it'll be empty because the Hawks are on the road. They'll be down in California enjoying some sunny weather against the LA Rams. This is a get-back game for the Hawks, as I mentioned before, because I guess the second game of the year, the Hawks kind of, didn't do so hot against the LA Rams. Another divisional game here. This is part of that. I would put this still in the. I'll call it a stressful stretch.
Yeah,
because after this, it's going to get a lot more difficult.
Think about 2 games in 4 days.
Yeah,
crazy.
Just that concept, and it's an honor, I guess, to play on Thanksgiving. But the game of the day, the Hawks will be in the middle of. We're getting ahead of ourselves, but the games will be in the middle of. The Hawks will be in the middle of the Thanksgiving lineup against the Niners on the 23rd. So after you're done eating your turkey and drinking your eggnog, be prepared for that. However, this week is nothing to sneeze at. The Rams are a good team. They are very, very well coached. What are we expecting, Niko?
Do you like eggnog?
I love eggnog.
Okay.
I love eggnog. Eggnog, alcoholic eggnog and non-alcoholic eggnog. But also, I would say that non-alcoholic eggnog, the texture is better because it's thicker. It's more of a milkshake. I don't like it when it gets runny.
Sure.
Yes.
I like the Hawks to beat the Rams. They DK Metcalf and Bobby Wagner at the weekly press conferences this week, they really said it best, in my opinion. They said, DK said, oh my gosh, week 1, that was like so long ago. He doesn't remember even like specifics about what may have gone wrong. If you remember, the Hawks were up 13-7 at halftime. They lost 30-13. And Bobby Wagner was like, everybody's a different team. And that really stood out to me. The Hawks are much better than they were in week 1. There's not even a question about that.
Oh, yeah.
And let's not forget, Devin Witherspoon wasn't out there. He wasn't healthy yet. I was looking back at our video from that game. Cam Akers was still running the ball for the Rams, and he's on the Vikings. I believe I don't know if he's healthy right now, but he's been traded is the point.
Right.
Different teams all around. And like Cooper Kupp's out there for the Rams. He wasn't there in week 1.
Yeah.
So it's a different game, different atmosphere. I think the Hawks have figured it out a bit. I think the Rams just kind of maybe exploited a couple things in the second half. I think the Hawks get this one. I just like the way they're playing right now. And you can point to, the Commanders game, they let them hang around. Well, you know what? The run defense was stout. They made another game-winning drive when they absolutely had to. That means more to me than anything.
Right.
Anything out there. And you know what? In some of those games, specifically the Ravens, it was the turnover bug that got them 0 turnovers. Pete Carroll was pumped after saying they put up that goose egg in the turnover department. That was huge. I like the Hawks. They're gonna cover, I think, and I think that this is a big one because you get it. You go to 7-3. And then you got 4 games that you may very well be the underdog in all 4. Niners on Thanksgiving night. And that's the other part of it. Rams Sunday, Niners Thursday, 2 games, 4 days. That's absurd in the NFL.
It's obscene.
And then you play another Thursday game after Thanksgiving. You go to Dallas, which they'll wear the throwbacks again for that.
Ooh.
Najee prepared for that, it looks like. And I think it'll be the whites. No, they'll probably wear blue in Dallas.
Yeah.
And then the Niners, you play them again, this time down in the Bay Area. And then... So we're going to the 5th game, if you count the Rams, 4th game out after that. You got the Eagles here at Lumen Field, December 17th, Super Bowl favorite, all that good stuff. So that's 4 games. I don't think they lose all 4, but they're probably the underdog in all 4. And if you get out of that stretch 2-2 after starting 7-3, you're at 9-5, and you're in really good shape for the playoffs. If disaster were to have struck and you fall to 7-7 or 8-6, I mean, certainly one's better than the other, but it's not quite as clear cut as that 9-5 or better, 10-4, et cetera, 11-3. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So like this game against the Rams is huge because then let's go back a little bit. That you lose to the Rams, then you have those 4. You're suddenly 6-4 with those 4 brutal games.
As I mentioned,
you know what I'm saying? That's a big stretch.
As I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I mean, it's crunch time for everyone. I need to buy Christmas gifts. The Huskies need to win the last 2 spike games, and the Hawks need to. They're punching up. That's the thing. I mean, you even say, and to the Hawks' point, it's hard to beat a team twice in 1 year. You know, I mean, you see a team twice in a year. You know, you see different looks. Niko mentioned perfectly. These teams are different. You know, I think the Hawks are definitely better. They came off a very, very, very tight game against the Commanders last week. By the way, I wanted another shameless plug. I'm not the Swami or anything like that, but I do want to mention that I did mention when we were talking to Scott last episode, from WJLA in DC. Shout out to Scott that. Sam Howell can sling the ball, and he slung the ball a lot.
Yeah, that was a good preview.
It's a great. I mean, because the offense is very, very good, but it's a skill to win a game when you have to win a game. You know, and I think that skill is going to translate for the Hawks going forward because they're playing some very, very tough teams. The Rams are. You know, they're 3-6, but they may be the best 3-6 team out there. You know, you just can't run over them. And then, you know, continually against the Niners. That Thanksgiving Day game, provided the Hawks beat the Rams and the Niners beat the Buccaneers, that's for the first place in the NFC West on Thanksgiving. What else could you want?
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait for that game. And I think, I'll tell you what. One of the things I love is being around the Virginia Mason Athletic Center, headquarters of the Seahawks. It's a really unique privilege. I'm lucky to be there several times a week for KOMO News. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because you really get a feel for the vibe and atmosphere at that place. You know, you can hear a coach, you can hear a player say, oh, this culture is great. And it doesn't quite resonate unless you're actually there. Because that's like coach speak, right?
Right.
But when you're there, it's this really unique vibe. Like it's a family atmosphere. And I don't use that term lightly. Like everybody is friendly and whatever, but like, that's not why they're a good football team. The point I'm getting at is like, there's just this cool, unique aura to it. And you see Pete Carroll riding around the scooter. You see when they do this fun social media thing with the question and they're having a blast with it.
Yeah.
You know, Bobby and DK I brought up earlier when they're doing their press conference. They're always like messing with one another. Like Bobby goes first, then DK comes up and they're like shouting jabs at each other from one end of the podium to the other end of the auditorium. And it's just this winning culture. You know, there's a lot of teams that don't even play music during practice. And Pete's got a jam, and I walked out and Tupac was blaring on a Tuesday.
Hit him up, baby.
Yeah, you know, and it's just I wasn't going with hit him up. That's a vulgar one. I was kidding. But it was California Love playing. But no, to your point, just to show I know a little bit more than one song.
There you go. Hit him up is a great song.
Well, yeah. But it's a unique venue, unique feel. And I think that really helps this team be good. You know, so many guys that have come back, like a Frank Clark or Bobby even, or they're like, you know, I went somewhere else, and this isn't to knock those franchises, but it wasn't quite like a Pete Carroll led Seahawks. And I think that's what serves this team well. I think it's no coincidence that you have that kind of atmosphere. And then you go out two of the last three games and you have game-winning drives essentially with less than 2 minutes to go. I mean, that Browns one was crazy. 152, they get the ball, boom, 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 they score. The Commanders game, they go, all seems maybe like, oh gosh, we're going to overtime. No problem. Geno just locks down 4 or 5 passing, field goal, bang. You know, it's just, and I think that starts with how they prepare every single day at the VMAC. And I know that's cliche. All their practice, not sure it's practice, but it's about this culture that Pete's been cultivating for well over a decade now. And it shows. It shows in the guys who come back. It shows in these close games. Nobody's going to go undefeated. Everybody's going to have a tough game.
Oh, yeah.
But those moments where it comes down to it, I have the utmost confidence in the Seahawks 10 times out of 10.
You know, I've never met Pete Carroll, but I can tell you, just listening to Niko speak about the Hawks and, you know, and Pete Carroll right now, I would run through a wall for that guy, honestly. I really would. You know, I watched the interview once with, there was Noah Fant talking about the Seahawks way, kind of, you know, just like Pete Carroll will have his system, he'll put it in place, and he'll have some room for the players to just kind of like be better. You know, make it their own, you know, and that's what we're seeing. And it also shows that when you're practicing and you're listening to Tupac and you're kind of, you know, football is a game after all, you know, you're practicing in a non-stressful environment. Well, you know, there are stressful moments, but when you go into stressful moments like game-winning drive against the Commanders, you're like, oh, we got this, because we're practicing this in like in an almost non-stressful way. I mean, I know I work better when I'm not in a stressful environment, you know, and everyone else does, you know. So I think that's one reason why they are where they are in the NFL and not fighting for high draft picks like some other teams.
Sure.
At the Giants.
How about Superintendent Mary brings up our KOMO 4 keys?
Hi, Mary.
Shout out to Mary. Been with us a couple months now.
Doing great.
Doing awesome. Najee, you go first.
Okay, so we got 4 keys here. Revenge on the mind. That's the first key.
And that's what we kind of talked about that. But
Yeah.
I think it's real.
It's definitely a get back game. Definitely, you don't want to lose to a team, even if you are a team that make the playoffs, like the Hawks hopefully will. You don't want to just be like, yeah, well, the Rams beat you twice. Come on,
Sure.
You don't want that. You don't want that at all.
It's interesting you mentioned that because the year the Seahawks didn't make it, Russell's last year, they beat the Niners twice, and the Niners went to the conference title game. It's one of those things.
There you go.
I will say, the Seahawks always say the right things, and they're right. And when they do that, as far as like, oh, it's another game, it's the next one, we got to get this. But come on, they are ultra competitors. They don't want the Rams to have that on them. They want to beat the Rams. That does not sit well with this team.
No, not at all. No, no. The ultimate competitors, believe me. How different are they? You kind of talked about this before. You laid out Cam Akers. I haven't even heard that name, Cam Akers, in a long time. But was Matt Stafford even healthy in that first game? There's a lot of things that this is a whole new Rams team, a whole new Hawks team.
Yeah, it's so interesting to think about how this will play out differently because of that.
Yeah, and also it's the battle of third downs as well.
I think for the Hawks, that's been one of the sticking points. Yeah. Both sides of the ball. I think offensively they did much better this game. They had some nice passes to Tyler Lockett, especially.
You're right.
The defense, Bobby Wagner said it. Pete Carroll said it. They literally said like the same thing, just in a different way. Like, we can be better on third down stops, and that's everything. Third down conversions and stops. I know we're getting to the nitty gritty of a football thing here, but I think that's clutch. So
well. Third downs will make it or break a game, honestly. I think the first 2 times I kind of like maybe not even feel out downs. One thing that bugs the ever-loving life out of me is, as I've mentioned, I'm a Giants fan, and you'll see them almost play for third down, play for the 3rd and 1s, and the nice thing about the Hawks is the Hawks don't have many of those, and then when they do, they generally do well because of the running game. But this has been a sticking point going forward, and I think third downs will be very, very important for the next game, I think, against the Niners.
Yeah,
but especially this game. And the last key is clutch finishes, like we saw last week.
And I think that's the difference when it comes to this team. And Najee, can you imagine the momentum, the everything that comes with this team if they were to get both of these 2 games in 4 days? It's really difficult. Like, come on. But if they were to do it,
I could see it.
And you're suddenly talking about a team that's 8-3.
I can see it.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
They definitely can do it. It's just a matter of if they will. And I don't think it's a knock. The 2 games in 4 days, I think that's brutal.
What are you a little upset at the schedule makers? I don't
think the Seahawks are the only team it happens to. Clearly, but
right.
But I don't like that it happened. And I think that,
well, when you combine that with the week 4 bye week,
yeah.
Also, I'm just a little annoyed, but I love a good Thanksgiving Day game, honestly, and I think that Niners game is.
It would just be better if they were off this past Sunday, or this coming Sunday.
Yeah,
like you had a little extra time because of the early game.
Right. Well, yeah. Again, schedule makers, and I keep going back to that week 4 bye week. It's like that's way too early for a bye week.
Sure.
Even 2 weeks ago would have been fine, or even next week would be great. And then the back-to-back Thursday games is a little odd as well. But you have that so that you have that from Thursday to that Sunday following after that Cowboys game. So going to the second Niners game, so you have a little time to prepare for this one, a lot of time to prepare for the second one. Splitting is not ideal. We don't want to split. I don't like splitting anything, but I think there's your silver lining if there is one.
Give me a score
for the Rams game.
Yeah, we'll stick with the Rams. We're gonna do a special early week podcast next week.
Yeah. I really truly believe that the Hawks, coming off of the blowout win against Baltimore, I haven't forgotten. Close game against the Commanders, better than you would think. Commanders. I think this is a game where the Hawks can really stretch their legs a bit.
I'm thinking the same thing.
I think maybe like a 27-17 game. Nothing too crazy, but I think you have to respect the Rams also, though. This is a division game. They're on the road. I put a lot of stock into the whole being on the road and being on, versus being at home. So I think the Oregon State game will be as close as we talked about the Huskies prior. I don't know. I think it'll be a 10-point game, but it will not be easy, though.
Yeah, I'm going to say, it's funny you said 10 points. I'm going 9 points.
Yeah.
I think it's 30-21. Jason Myers coming through with 3 field goals. And I think it's one of those games where it's like 27-21 late. Rams are still in it. Jason Myers kicks it to put it out of reach, and that's that. I like the Hawks' chances. I think they're going to go into this stretch with a bunch of momentum, and we're going to learn a lot more about this team over the next month heading into the holiday season.
Oh, yeah. This is definitely, like I mentioned, I've said it before, this is the time. Get your gifts ready, get your Hawks jersey ready, get your Huskies jersey ready, because they're out here. And this is the time where the teams need your support, especially that Thanksgiving game at home, by the way, at Lumen Field against the San Francisco 49ers. But before that, we got to take a trip down to LA. We got to go back to Cali, guys.
Yeah, so I think we always predict wins for the teams usually, although I did predict them to lose to the Ravens, I think. I did.
But you didn't think it was going to be that
No,
bad.
Nobody thought that.
No, and that's one loss that really sticks with you, man.
Like, well, they bounced back in a great way, you know?
They bounced back, and then that they won the game. But, I mean, a 3-point, win against a team with not many wins is not exactly what you want. You know what I'm saying?
No, I got you.
Yeah.
How explosive will next week's podcast be when you're coming off the Rams game? We still want to break that down a bit, but then you have the 49ers coming up on Thursday. And then, oh, by the way, no matter what happens with the Huskies and Beavers, you got the Apple Cup week. Holy cow.
That's going to be like the most emotional Apple Cup. This is going to be the most emotional Apple Cup. And I think, and I don't want to get too far ahead because I think the Huskies will make the top 4. But that Apple Cup game is the one game that you throw the records out the window. It's like Yankees, Red Sox.
Yeah.
It's like Commanders, Cowboys. Because that's straight up. It's not just even rivalry or hate now. I think the hate may be a little bit deeper now, I guess, but it's spite, it's anger, and it's everything that makes that rivalry so great.
Yes, I can't wait.
Yeah, I can't wait either.
The Apple Cup always has so much animosity, and now it's just taken to a whole nother level.
Oh,
like you said.
Yeah.
And
I hope they'll play it. I hope they'll play it next year too.
Huskies do have that opening on the schedule.
Yeah.
The Pac-12 situation. We're going to dive much more into that next week when we have a little bit more clarity with all the court stuff coming out. But it'll be interesting to see if the Cougs have room, if it's in a scheduling alliance with the Mountain West. We'll see what comes down with that. But Najee, I had fun with you as always, my friend.
It's been great. I love this.
Yeah, and like I said, next week's podcast just as fun, maybe even more than this week because of stakes getting higher and higher each week. Can't wait for it.
The crunch
my
time
new background picture, Dubs.
Shout out to Dubs.
My buddy Dubs.
Shout out to Dubs. We love Dubs.
We love Dubs. Dubs should be mentioned in every podcast and should be our co-host.
Niko, you showed me a video just before this podcast started of Dubs stepping on a beaver. Can you elaborate on that?
Can I what now?
Elaborate a bit on that a little bit.
It was last year's game at UW, or a game where the power got knocked out for a little bit because it was very windy.
Right.
And Dubs is well trained. He was stepping on his beaver toy, and I said, "Beautiful night for a game." And he's like, "Oh,
I love Huskies.
Love that dog.
Love that dog."
So shout out to Dubs. Shout out to the Hawks and Huskies. We'll see you next week right here on the KOMO Sports End Zone. He's Najee. I'm Niko. Take care.
Bye-bye.